City Church, what's up?
Merry Christmas.
You already know.
I know, but it's Christmas.
But we're You Already Know podcast. Merry Christmas, you already know.
Welcome to our weekly podcast where we take a couple minutes and kind of go a little deeper on Sunday morning's message and talk through maybe some of the things that didn't kind of come up in the message, maybe some stuff on the cutting room floor, and this is our chance to do that.
Yeah. So week 4 of Advent. Before we get to the message, I feel like I'm saying that every week, but we got to talk about the kids' choir.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know. If you weren't there, go back and watch it because there's just something about seeing kids up there worshiping.
Yeah, they're the cutest little things. And they did so good. They were so confident. That's the word that I would put on it. They were super confident and echoing, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So shout out to Pastor Joey and the team that got that together. We loved the family service. It was fun to have kids in the room and a little louder than normal, but it was good energy.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Like we've always, we're a pretty family-friendly church, and I always say that the sound of children is the sound of life, and when it's absent from the church culture and community, then there's a lack of life, and there was abundance of life on Sunday. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun. So getting into the message this week, we got to talk about Prince of Peace, which I feel like this is the one you've been waiting for,
yes.
Like every week. You're like, and then we'll talk about Prince of Peace. So talk just a little bit about this idea that peace is not a position, peace is a person.
So for a lot of people, the thought of peace, unfortunately, gets relegated to a place. What I mean by that is when I finally get to that place in my career, or I finally get to my place in this relationship, or I finally get to a certain place in a circumstance or a situation, that there I will uncover this sense of peace. And unfortunately, what a lot of people figure out fairly quickly is that if that's your perspective of peace, then the goal line keeps moving. So what we find is people living in anxiety, constantly anxious, frustrated. There's a lot of worry about the next step because they're constantly in search for this peace that seems to ever elude them. So when Isaiah defines who Jesus is to the world, he says that he's the Prince of Peace, meaning that Jesus governs over peace. And I use that word really specifically because the idea of governance means that peace is, or that peace lies underneath the authority of Jesus. So at any point, we can find peace in the person of Jesus. So when we're in the middle of our circumstance or in the middle of our journey, we don't have to wait to this perceived end where things might line up and we might happen to stumble on peace. We can call on peace in the middle of our journey and have peace that passes all understanding, a passage we didn't even really get into on Sunday, but a peace that doesn't make sense because for everybody else, it only makes sense to have peace when things line up. Mm-hmm. But with Jesus, when he speaks, there's peace. And we can find that peace in the middle of our chaos, and it brings things to a point of silence, and we find peace. So it's always been one of my favorite parts of Christmas is this idea of being reminded that you are chasing peace, but peace is a person. His name is Jesus.
Yeah. And I love the story that you shared, which doesn't kind of seem like a Christmas story, but this idea of the disciples out in the storm. And I'd not ever thought about it until you were talking about Sunday, how so many of them were fishermen. All of them grew up around the water, so they were used to storms. Many of them had probably been out on the water in storms before. But for them to be afraid means that had to be some storm. And I think sometimes we think that we're finding peace by trying to act like it's not, the situation we're in, whatever we're up against is not as big a deal as it really is. But that's really not inviting God to step into the middle of it, because sometimes it is what would make sense to be earth-shattering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will you talk just a little bit about maybe kind of the practicals of what to do when we find ourselves in those situations?
Yeah, in that story, I've always loved the fact that all these guys grew up around fishing, are actually called into ministry while fishing, right? Like, I'll make you fishers of men. And the one guy who has nothing to do with fishing, the carpenter, is sleeping at the foot of the boat.
One of the story, I don't know if it's the one that you read that even says he has a pillow. He's just so at ease that he's sleeping on a pillow.
I think there's a couple things that add to that could actually help in our practicality. Like, I think what Jesus knew was that when he set the direction at the beginning of the journey, he wasn't guessing at the conclusion. Like, he knew, because he's God. So he knew, we're going to the other side. I think sometimes our peace is in understanding that if God is calling you into the middle of a thing, even if things seem out of control and chaotic, that there's still peace, because the God of the journey has sent you to where he sent you. So it could be that things at work are chaotic, but if you know that God is giving you this job and you're sitting in a season where you know that God's in the middle of that all, you can have peace because you're following his direction. We're going to get to the other side is something that I think the disciples could have rested on in the moment. But again, sometimes from a real practical place, sometimes we lose sight of that. Like, in the middle of the chaos, it becomes so overwhelming. We start questioning, did God really call us here? Did God really say that? And I think, again, from a really practical standpoint, we could do what they did. We can speak to the prince, right? Like, wake up, peace. And I think some of that lends to moments and moments and even seasons. We'll talk about fasting a little bit and prayer as we step into the new year. But I do think, like, disciplines of focused prayer, it may be that you need to cut a day out and spend some time seeking the Lord. It may be that you need to formulate your discipline of day to day in order to create time where you're intentionally seeking the Lord, because where there is no peace, if we can just wake him up. And I hate that visual, because the idea that Jesus is sleeping in the boat. It's not that he's sleeping, it's that we have lost focus of where he is. So again, I think those are the two practicals I would say is, remember, if he has called you into a middle of the thing, no matter how chaotic things are around you, you're going to get to the other side. And then the second thing I would say is, even when you lose that direction, there's always that discipline of prayer, that tool of prayer that opens us up to the hearing the Lord's voice and sitting in that peace.
Yeah, that's so important. I also really loved what Pastor Emma shared on Sunday. She talked a lot about what she sees in students, but I felt really seen that it's not just a student problem.
Absolutely.
Where a lot of times we will think, if I just get through this, if I just get this task checked off my list, if I can just get to this goal, then I'll have peace on the other side of that. And then what so often happens in the experience with students and with adults is we get there and then it's just like, then we have the next thing to worry about. And so she just talked about how peace it's eternal. Like, it's not something that is within time. Is there anything that you want to share along those lines of what it means that we don't have a temporary peace, we have an eternal peace?
Well, I guess my question, if Emma was here, so I'll just ask you, even though you didn't prepare for that portion of the message. What does that mean? Like, how does the peace of God being eternal, the peace of Jesus, that being eternal, how does that affect your daily walk?
I think it just puts everything in perspective. Nothing about my life except for life with Jesus is eternal. Everything is going to come to an end. Every season, good or bad, is going to reach an end. And so when you think that way and you remember that peace is a person, it's just, I get Jesus forever, whatever season I'm in, whether it's good or bad, whether there's a lot, whether there's a goal I'm trying to achieve. I just can hold on to Jesus.
Yeah, I love that. She diverted our attention, and I think sometimes that's necessary, to divert our attention from the temporary thing that seems to be sucking away all the joy of life, all the, it's forcing the stress and anxiety. All those things are temporary. But the one thing that is eternal, our relationship with Jesus Christ, provides a peace that's eternal. So I think it's set a priority. Like, if we can just set our focus on the eternal things, we can celebrate and live in that peace versus trying to find peace in the middle of that chaos in all the temporary. But then, Pastor Ashley, you communicated this idea, and I love the way that you phrased it, that peace is available, because unlike so much in life where we have to find it, we have to dig it out, peace has come to us through the life of Jesus. Again, I think in the same phrase, like, the availability of peace through Jesus, what does that look like? And to maybe somebody who's in the middle of a chaotic situation, how can they experience the peace that's already come?
Yeah, I'm a practical person, so I tend to just kind of get right to what does this mean. And there's a passage in Philippians. It's actually where the peace that passes understanding comes from. We just didn't focus on that as much. That I brought my cheat sheet Bible app, where Paul says, don't worry about anything, but pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. And then you will experience that peace that passes understanding. So I think it's as simple as, in a moment, I have this picture, I talked about it on stage that I didn't have before I was on stage, but just this idea of sometimes we can be in such a chaotic situation that the only place there's peace is in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like, I think about parents with young kids, I think about just gatherings, all that sort of thing, that like, you don't have to go to a special place or anything. You can just be in the bathroom with the door locked for 5 minutes and tell God what you need and thank God for what he's already done for you. And it's kind of shifting that perspective that Pastor Emma reminded us about. Just by doing those two things, we can access that peace.
Yeah, so you spent some time on gratitude, which I thought was super powerful, specifically in a season when we're receiving a lot, where kind of the thought of the season is, and I'm just a huge believer. Even in my relationship with people here, like outside of the context of my relationship with God, if you give me something, or it's something. Sometimes it's time. I think my senior pastors used to get a little frustrated because it didn't matter how many times I preached or how long I had preached for the church. If you gave me a spot to preach on a Sunday morning, or I came and did a Wednesday night for you or a camp for you, it was usually followed with an email that thanked you for the opportunity, just because I believe in that idea of generosity. And I want people to know how much those things mean. And you spoke quite a significant bit, which I really appreciated, on this idea of how generosity kind of counteracts some of the anxiety that we struggle through. What does it look like to live a generous life, and how does that affect
really
our living?
Gratitude.
Yeah.
Being grateful for the generosity of God and others around us. But they've done all these studies about the way our brains are actually wired, that we cannot have anxiety and gratitude at the same time because they use the same part of our brain. And so this reality, gratitude is really choosing to shift your focus at its core. And when you can start to think, man, even the fact that the God of the universe knows me, like that right there is enough, if you really think about it, to go really deep in gratitude. We lose sight of those temporary, smaller things that have seemed overwhelming, and they are sometimes a big deal. But when you can hold on to that gratitude, it actually rewires the way your brain works, and the stress hormones that you stop producing as much. And if you develop a habit of it, it makes it easier as you keep going, which I think is so cool, because God's the one who made our brains, that there's something in there to recognizing, choosing to be thankful, and then seeing that he does take away that worry, that anxiety, and give us that peace, because it's all about a shift in perspective.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun.
It was fun.
I loved the response from the congregation. It just felt like everybody, it was a Christmas. It was a Christmas celebration, but we really did try to focus everybody on the person of Jesus. This has been a fun series.
Yeah, it has been. I can't believe we're almost to Christmas. So make sure to join us. Christmas Eve is one of my favorite nights of the year. We'll be right here, 6 p.m. We're going to have family service, candle lighting. It's going to be really special, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we do like snacks and hot cocoa and
yeah. There'll be another surprise that we won't tell you about.
We can't tell you. It's going to be a winter wonderland. And
stop giving hints.
I have to give hints. I mean, if I don't give hints, no one's going to know. We'll get a chance to. It's a little bit of a different service. We do it in the round. There's candle lighting. It's a lot of fun, and a really great way to set your heart right before the big Christmas day. We hope that this series, this time, has helped focus your heart towards taking the advantage, taking the most advantage as we can of this Advent season.
Yeah, and then don't forget, don't show up Sunday morning. Celebrate Christmas at home with your family, and we will see you January 1st. We will be here January 1st at 10 a.m., and I cannot wait to see you Christmas Eve and in the new year.